The world's population is currently 7.4 billion. By 2030 it's predicted to be 8.2 billion, by 2050 9.5 billion, and 2100 11.2 billion. This is a problem because the demand for resources outweighs the supply since 1985. Thanks to advances in medical care and quality of life, people are now living longer than before. The average life expectancy for a male is 74 and a female is 78, which if compared to 100 years ago, the average for a male was 46 and a female was 48. This means that as well as having a high birth rate, an elderly population means there's a lot more people to support. The world's population is increasing at such a fast rate that by the time we finish this vodcast, the population will be 3,000 higher. This is causing many problems such as disease and shortage of resources. According to UN Water, 75% of the Earth is covered by water. 97.5% of this is salt water and 2.5% fresh water. 70% of this fresh water is in glaciers, and the remaining 30% is surface water in lakes, ponds and groundwater. Most of the freshwater resources on Earth are either too polluted or unreachable for human use. So that leaves less than 1% of fresh water, or 0.003% of the total water available for human use. 70% of this unpolluted freshwater is used for agriculture, 22% for industry and only 8% for domestic use. Fresh water is renewed through processes of the water cycle, where water from sources such as lakes, streams, rivers and dams gets evaporated and forms clouds and then returns as precipitation. This water is a limited and finite resource due to more fresh water being consumed by humans than is restored by nature. This results in a reduction in the quantity of fresh water available in rivers, streams, ponds, dams and underground. Water scarcity affects every continent. According to the United Nations, approximately 1.8 billion people are living in countries or regions affected by absolute water scarcity. And 2/3 of the world's population could be living under water stress conditions. At the current rate of climate change, by 2030, almost a half of the population will be living under extreme water stress. This figure from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization showed global water withdrawal in kilometres cubed a year against time. It dates back to 1900 and it shows that in agriculture was the main use of the water at over 500 kilometres cubed a year. Nowadays, agriculture is multiplied more than 5 times and uses over 2,500 kilometres cubed a year. However, the greatest proportional increase is in industries, which is the red, which has increased from roughly 50 in 1900s to nowadays it's multiplied over 15 times. There is also factors such as urbanisation, increasing per capita income, pollution and then the subsequent eutrophication leading to a decrease in the availability of fresh water. Global warming is further exacerbating and securing the global water crisis by increasing the intensity and duration of heat waves and droughts, melting glaciers in the polar regions, which then mix with the salt water and are then too salty to drink. This leads to an increase in ocean volume which causes sea level to rise, contaminating freshwater sources found in coastal regions. To make things worse, energy industry use is set to double the water use by 2035. As UN Water states, collecting water is expected to become increasingly burdensome with global warming. More regions will experience water shortages as rainfall becomes erratic, glaciers melt and seas rise. People living within 60 miles of a shoreline, which is a full third of the world's population, will be hit especially hard as they are most susceptible to increased salinity of coastal potable water sources. The demand for freshwater is increasing by 64 billion cubic metres a year, which has caused freshwater withdrawals to triple over the last 50 years. Freshwater is the most fundamental finite resource with no substitutes for most uses, yet we are consuming freshwater at least 10 times faster than it is being replenished. 34% of fish species, mostly from freshwater, are in danger of extinction according to the World Conservation Union, which tracks threats to the world's global biodiversity. Freshwater ecosystems have lost a greater proportion of their species and habitat than ecosystems on land or in the oceans. In addition, they are probably in greater danger from further losses such as pollution, overfishing and many other threats.
Sorry I took you for granted. I should have listened to you.
In extent, freshwater ecosystems are quite limited, covering only about 1% of the Earth's surface. Yet they are highly diverse and contain a disproportionately large amount of the world's species. According to water scientists, this water scarcity may force the world into vegetarianism in the not too distant future.
Intensive farming produces more and cheaper food per acre and per animal. This has helped to feed a booming human population, and it also stops surrounding land from being converted into further agricultural land.
It has led to the emergence of new parasites as well as the re-emergence of old parasites previously considered to be under control. Furthermore, intensive farming can kill beneficial insects and plants, degrade the very soil it depends on, and create clogged water systems and polluted runoff. It can also increase susceptibility to flooding, cause genetic erosion in local species, as well as decrease biodiversity in the local areas. If we are to feed a growing population, many believe increasing the yield and efficiency of crops is the best way forward. Some of this research is focused towards the enzymes rubisco and rubisco activase, which are responsible for carbon assimilation in C3 plants. Rubisco is required in the production of carbon by photosynthesis, but is only available when rubisco activase is not blocking the active site. Rubisco activase denatures above 30 degrees, so scientists are attempting to find or produce a form of rubisco activase which is much more tolerant to a wider range of temperatures, therefore preventing this enzyme from being the limiting factor. Two of the main aims of plant-based research in this context are to increase the efficiency of photosynthesis, but also to decrease photorespiration. Scientists around the world are trying to figure out ways to do both of these things. Ideas include putting the C4 pathway into rice, increasing leaf size in crops, and increasing the tolerance of enzymes involved in photosynthesis. Urbanised areas are already close to supporting the maximum number of people possible, and it's not as simple as just building in rural areas, as there are insufficient materials. This is a classic sci-fi kind of problem with some very extravagant possible solutions. Currently, people like Elon Musk and his SpaceX program are promoting extraterrestrial colonisation. Other people have ideas of incredibly tall skyscrapers and underwater bubble cities with the potential to house millions of people. However, these would require a large amount of resources and are therefore a very distant reality. Diseases occur far more frequently when people live in close proximity to one another. Currently, over 50% of the global population lives in urbanised areas. With more people living in densely populated areas, there is more frequent contact between individuals. This allows for disease to spread more frequently. Also, as it becomes more common for people to travel around the world, it also becomes easier for diseases to travel with them. An outbreak in one region that would have otherwise been contained can move into another uninfected region when infected people travel or relocate to these areas. Environmental factors such as climate change can also lead to the spreading of diseases, especially those that are vector-borne or carried by a host. For example, the West Nile virus is spread by mosquitoes, and as the climate changes, the disease-carrying mosquitoes are able to move into regions where they previously could not survive, thus affecting new areas. Additionally, as global temperatures increase, so do the conditions under which many of these carriers flourish.
One of the biggest environmental problems we face today is overpopulation. The current population will continue to use the Earth's resources, decimating the land and wreaking havoc on the natural biodiversity of the Earth. Not only are we draining the Earth's fresh water supplies, we are eradicating many species of plant life, as well as completely filling landfills with toxic waste. We are expanding at such a rapid rate that farmers cannot maintain enough crops to feed the population we currently have.
As it stands, we're not currently able to sustain this population if it continues to rise rapidly. Some people believe birth control policies could work, but China's recently eased one-child policy shows this may not be the case, or at least that a decreased birth rate cannot necessarily be attributed to such policies. A lot of potential solutions may take time to take effect, and so we must reserve judgment until later on. However, by the time they have taken effect, the effects of overpopulation may have become irreversible.